Rich Forrester had always believed that he understood power, that it existed within the walls of Forrester Creations, measured by fabric, beauty, and control. In his world, power was aesthetic, subtle, and absolute. It was the curve of a design that could dictate the season, the whisper of a scandal that could break or save an empire. But all of that certainty began to crack the moment the letter arrived, unmarked and signed, yet addressed unmistakably to him. It came not with a courier or through the company's mailroom, but by hand, slipped beneath his office door sometime after midnight. The envelope was heavy, embossed with an unfamiliar crest, two gates, intertwined in silver foil, gleaming like a promise and a warning at once. Inside was a single line written in elegant script: "Beauty is only the beginning. Come see what lies beyond." There was no address, no name, only coordinates, a location along the coast that didn't appear on any public map. Rich had seen his share of mysterious invitations before: charity galas, clandestine investor meetings, private exhibitions, but something about this one felt different. It didn't appeal to his vanity. It challenged it. It dared him to look past the world he had built. That night, he couldn't sleep. The moon hung low over Los Angeles, glinting off the glass facade of Forrester Creations like a silent observer. He thought about everything that had defined him: his rivalry with Bill, his complicated love for Brooke, the endless tug-of-war between art and commerce, family and ego. And yet, for the first time, he wondered if he had simply been living inside a gilded cage, mistaking luxury for freedom. The letter sat on his nightstand, its presence growing heavier by the hour. By dawn, Rich made his decision. The coordinates led him to a private stretch of coastline several miles north of Malibu, where the cliffs met the sea in jagged silence. There were no signs, no roads, just a narrow trail hidden between the rocks. He parked his car and followed the path on foot, the sound of waves growing louder until it seemed to pulse inside his chest. Then, through the mist, he saw it: a pair of massive wrought iron gates, black as obsidian, their surface engraved with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the light. A single guard stood beside them, dressed not in uniform but in a tailored suit. Without a word, he handed Ridge a card. "Welcome to the threshold," it read. The gates opened soundlessly, and Ridge stepped through. What awaited him on the other side was unlike anything he could have imagined. A sprawling estate unfolded before him, part mansion, part research compound, part sanctuary. The air smelled of sea salt and something metallic, faint but intoxicating. People moved quietly through the grounds, each dressed in shades of ivory and gray, their faces calm, yet unreadable. There was no sign of extravagance, yet everything radiated precision and wealth, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. A woman approached him, tall, elegant, her eyes the color of steel. "Mr. Forrester," she said with a faint smile. "We've been expecting you." Her name was Celeste. She introduced herself as a liaison for the initiative, though she never explained what the initiative was. Instead, she spoke in riddles, about design as a form of control, about fashion as a language of obedience, about how beauty was the most effective form of manipulation because it disguised power as desire. Ridge listened, intrigued and unnerved. "You've spent your life shaping the visible world," she told him. "But here, we shape the unseen." She led him through the compound, past rooms filled with people sketching patterns that weren't just clothing but coded symbols, past glass chambers where architects and scientists worked side by side, past gardens whose geometry seemed almost too perfect, as if nature itself had been redesigned. Everywhere he looked, he felt the hum of intention, the invisible machinery of influence. "This is Beyond the Gates," Celeste said softly. "A collective that operates where power truly resides, not in markets or media, but in meaning. Every decision made here ripples outward into the world you think you know." Ridge felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you already understand the language," she replied. "You've spent your life teaching people what to see, what to want. But what if you could teach them what to believe?" In the days that followed, Ridge became absorbed by the world behind the gates. He met figures whose influence extended far beyond fashion: financiers, philosophers, former political strategists, even artists who had disappeared from the public eye decades ago. They spoke of design not as expression but as architecture for society itself. The cut of a suit could define authority. The tone of a color palette could influence public sentiment. It was fashion as philosophy, aesthetics as weaponry. And the more Ridge listened, the more he began to realize how small Forrester Creations really was in comparison, a mere ripple in an ocean he had never known existed. At night, he stayed in a minimalist guest suite overlooking the cliffs. The ocean roared below like a reminder of something ancient and unyielding. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams that felt too vivid to be dreams at all. He saw Brooke standing at the edge of the sea, her face dissolving into mist. He saw Eric's designs burning in a fire that would not die. He heard a voice, Celeste's, maybe, or his own, whispering, "You can't return unchanged." Weeks turned into months. Ridge stopped returning calls from his family. Steffi left messages that grew increasingly frantic, while Brooke's tone shifted from confusion to heartbreak. But Ridge had crossed a line he didn't know how to uncross. Within the initiative, he had found something intoxicating: not love, not ambition, but understanding. They didn't just see the world as it was, they sculpted it. And he, for all his success, had been living as a sculptor who never realized he himself was clay. Celeste became his guide, his teacher, and perhaps something more. She challenged him in ways no one ever had, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. She saw through his arrogance, his nostalgia, his guilt. "The family you built," she said one night as they walked through the echoing halls, "is a mirror house. Every reflection you love is only yourself. To lead is to destroy the mirror." Ridge wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat. She showed him a project the initiative was developing, a series of immersive environments designed to recondition perception. Through sound, color, and architecture, they could alter how people experience truth. "Imagine," Celeste said, "a space where conflict dissolves because everyone sees beauty the same way." That's our goal, unity through illusion. Ridge felt both awe and dread. He recognized the brilliance of it, but also the danger. If you could control what people found beautiful, you could control everything: desire, morality, memory. And perhaps that was the point. One evening, Celeste invited him to a ceremony in the inner chamber, a vast, circular room illuminated by a single skylight. The members gathered in silence, each wearing identical masks of porcelain white. At the center stood a model, a woman draped in fabric unlike anything Ridge had ever seen. The material shimmered with a subtle, shifting pattern that seemed alive. "This is our creation," Celeste said. "A design that changes according to the gaze. No two people see it the same way. It reflects the observer's truth." Ridge felt his chest tighten. It was beautiful, yes, but horrifying in its implication. A dress that changed depending on who looked at it. What better metaphor for the world itself? Everyone chasing their own reflection, calling it reality. After the ceremony, Ridge stood alone on the terrace. The wind tore at his hair, carrying with it the sound of waves colliding against stone. He thought of his father, of Eric's steady hands sketching by lamplight, of his belief that art came from the heart, not from manipulation. For the first time, Ridge wondered if he had betrayed that legacy by coming here. The next morning, Celeste found him packing. "You're leaving," she said, not as a question. "I have to," Ridge replied. "I thought I came here to learn. But I think I came here to remember." Celeste smiled faintly. "You can leave the gates, Ridge. But you can't unsee what's beyond them." He drove back to Los Angeles under a sky bruised by twilight. The city looked different, smaller, flatter, as though its power had been drained. When he arrived at Forrester Creations, everything felt alien. The sketches, the fabrics, the meetings, they all seemed trivial, like echoes of a game whose rules he now knew were rigged. Brooke was waiting for him. Her eyes filled with questions, but Ridge couldn't answer them. How could he explain that he had seen a world where beauty was weaponized, where love was a strategy, where truth was elastic? How could he tell her that the man she loved no longer existed in the same way? Still, he tried to resume his life. He told himself that what he had experienced was simply another chapter, another lesson in a long career. But that lie didn't hold. Every design he touched afterward bore the influence of what he had seen. The symmetry of the gardens, the cold precision of the architecture, the subtle codes woven into patterns. His colleagues called his new collections revolutionary. The press praised his visionary transformation. But Rich knew the truth. He wasn't creating anymore.
He was translating.
At night, he dreamed of the gates. Sometimes they were open, sometimes they were locked. Sometimes he saw Celeste standing beyond them, watching him with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. She never spoke, but he always woke with the same words echoing in his mind. You can't return unchanged. Gradually, the people around him began to notice the difference. Brooks said he seemed distant, as if part of him were somewhere else. Steffi told him his designs felt inhumanly perfect. Even Eric, who admired the technical brilliance of his work, confessed that it lacked warmth. Ridge smiled and said he was simply evolving, but deep down, he feared they were right. The more he tried to reclaim his old life, the more it slipped away. And then came the first sign that the initiative had followed him home. One evening, he received a delivery, a package wrapped in white silk, sealed with the same crest of twin gates. Inside was a note: "The threshold is never truly behind you." Beneath it lay a small glass vial containing a fragment of the living fabric, the same material from the ceremony. He stared at it for a long time, his reflection warping on its surface. That night, he burned the vial in his studio furnace. The smoke that rose from it smelled of salt and iron, the scent of the sea beyond the gates. But the more he tried to distance himself, the more the world began to resemble the one he had left. Forrester's new investors demanded secrecy. Fashion houses began merging under collectives. Rumors circulated of a shadow network influencing global trends, dictating beauty standards not by art but by psychological metrics. Ridge recognized the patterns immediately. They were the same principles the initiative had perfected. It was spreading, the idea that beauty was control. He tried to warn Eric and Steffi, but they dismissed his paranoia. "You've been under too much stress," they said. Brooke begged him to rest, to let go of whatever he had seen. But Ridge couldn't. The deeper he looked, the clearer it became that what he had encountered wasn't just a secret society, it was a blueprint for the future. And he had been its unwitting architect. Months later, during a major fashion summit in New York, Ridge caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, Celeste, watching him from the balcony, her smile faint, knowing. When he blinked, she was gone. That night, a message appeared on his phone: "The next gate opens soon." He sat in his hotel room for hours, staring at the screen. He thought about the world outside, the flashing lights, the noise, the illusion of progress. He thought about how everything seemed to move faster now, how people consumed beauty without seeing it, how meaning had been replaced by algorithms. And he wondered if this had been the initiative's plan all along, not to rule the world, but to reshape it until no one noticed the difference. When Ridge returned to Los Angeles, he made a choice. He gathered his team and announced a new collection, one that would reject perfection, that would embrace imperfection, asymmetry, the raw humanity of creation. He poured everything he had into it, not just his skill, but his guilt, his longing, his defiance. The result was chaos and brilliance intertwined. The critics were divided. Some called it his masterpiece, others his breakdown. But for Ridge, it was the first honest thing he had made in years. On the night of the show, as the lights dimmed and the models stepped onto the runway, he felt something shift. The audience was silent, transfixed. Each design seemed to breathe, flawed but alive. For the first time since his return, Ridge felt whole, until he noticed, in the front row, an empty seat with a single white envelope resting on it. After the show, he opened it. Inside was a single sentence, written in the same elegant hand as before. You have opened another gate. He looked up, scanning the crowd, but no one was there. Only the faint echo of applause, fading like the tide. That night, Ridge walked alone through the city, his reflection multiplying in every glass surface: designer, lover, father, believer, traitor. He realized that the world beyond the gates had never truly left him because it was never a place. It was an idea. It lived in every choice he made, every creation he touched, every illusion he dared to dismantle. And perhaps that was the true secret. Once you see beyond beauty, you can never